Hi, everyone. I think I've met most of you, but if there's somebody that I haven't, I'm Margaret Leinen, Director of Scripps Institution of Oceanography at UC San Diego. So normally we would be having brunch in that wonderful Scripps Forum and mingling with the students while enjoying the view of the ocean. But it's 2020 and it's COVID-19 year. So we're having a student fellowship program by webinar today. And thank you so much for participating with us. We really wish we could be in person, but I really appreciate your taking time to join us and time to acknowledge our incredible students and your support of them. Scripps is a world-class research and education institution, and our students are really at the heart of the university and the heart of the institution. They are the next generation of experts, innovators, science leaders. They're the ones who will find solutions to some of the world's most pressing issues. And now, more than ever, we need competent and inquisitive scientists. Scientists who ask the right questions and who investigate the biggest issues and work to find solutions for our society. I am continually impressed and inspired by the caliber of Scripps students and by the quality of their research. It spans disciplines, it touches on all of Scripps' strategic themes that include climate change impacts and adaptation, resilience to hazards, human health and the oceans, innovative technology for observing the ocean, polar science, biodiversity and conservation, and national security. In today's environment, Scripps students are adapting to the challenges we're all facing, and they're finding innovative ways to stay connected, to use technology for good, and to carry their science forward. You already know in general how special they are, and that's what brings us together today. So now we're going to honor and thank you for your contributions to the support of Scripps students and have a chance to talk with some of them. Your generosity provides all of our students with unique opportunities to cultivate scientific curiosity, to explore, to learn, to grow, and for that we are very grateful. So far this year, Scripps has received more than $15.5 million from generous donors, including you. You have supported over 75 fellowships, and you've helped to support the exceptional work of over 200 Scripps students. Your support allows them the opportunity to pursue their dreams and gain unparalleled research opportunities, both on campus, in the field, and on our ships. And I'd like to give you a couple of unique examples. Your support helped Scripps doctoral student Amelia Chamberlain, who, as we speak, is headed to the Arctic as part of the International Mosaic expedition. It's one of the most ambitious studies of the Arctic ever. In it, the German icebreaker, the Polar Stern, is frozen into the ice for a year to study Arctic climate change. Despite the pandemic, Amelia was determined to continue her long-planned participation in this historic project. To get there, she had to fly to Germany, be tested, remain in quarantine in her hotel for 6 days, be tested again. She's now on a ship going to Svalbard, Norway. And before she makes it to the Polar Stern, she actually has to fly there to the ship, which is locked in the ice. Your support helped make this amazing adventure possible, and of course, the science that will result from it. Your support also helped graduate student Travis Courtney. Travis studies how climate drives coral reef change, and he is the recipient of the prestigious UC San Diego 2020 Chancellor's Dissertation Medal. The medal is awarded for the quality of academic research, the insight, originality, and creativity shown by the author, as well as the effectiveness of the writing, the clarity, and the organization of the thesis. And of course, all of that depends on the soundness of the methodology and the quality of the data. We're incredibly proud of Travis for this recognition. Your support has, excuse me, your support has also assisted students in the past who are now being able to use that support to leverage their careers. An example is Natalie Gallo, who is a postdoc here at Scripps. She was a graduate student and supported by fellowship funds. In addition to her research, she's interested in how science can best inform policy. She's participated in 5 international UN climate negotiation conferences. In the UN Oceans Conference, she was named one of Forbes magazine's 30 under 30 for science. She's given a TED Talk, and she was going to be a featured speaker at South by Southwest this year before that conference was canceled. It's my honor to lead such a talented group of students and early career scientists, and I can't wait to see what they will continue to accomplish in the years to come. It's clear that from your generosity that you care deeply about our students, and for that, I really want to thank you. By fostering this next generation of world leaders, you're investing in the future of our planet. Now more than ever, as we face unprecedented changes, I want to make sure you know that your support of Scripps and our students is making a difference in their lives, a difference in our institution, and a difference in our future, where we need the best science and to guide policy and decision makers. So now we're going to hear from some of the students themselves. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Adi Khen, and I'm a 5th-year PhD student in Dr. Jennifer Smith's lab at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography at UC San Diego. My main research interests are in how coral reefs are responding to global climate change, and specifically corals and algae. And so I'm using a time series of imagery taken every year for the past 10 years of the same plots of reef on Palmyra Atoll in the Central Pacific. I've been a mentor and tutor at the Price School at UC San Diego for the past several years. I met some kids when they were starting out in middle school and have followed them until they've either graduated high school and are attending college or are graduating high school this year, which has been really rewarding. Also, in my spare time, I like to draw, and I do digital art. I draw various marine organisms, and I like to combine them into figures, diagrams, and other illustrations. Also, over at Scripps, I volunteer in animal husbandry, so taking care of the animals that we keep in the experimental aquaria. I feed them, clean their tanks. I now have a very eccentric collection of pets, which includes octopuses, cuttlefish, multiple abalone, corals, etc.
Hello, my name is Natalie Gallo, and I'm a postdoc now, but previously I was a Scripps PhD student in the Biological Oceanography program. While I wish I'd been able to thank you in person at the fellowship brunch, I hope you accept my virtual thanks. Thank you so much for your support. Funding is always a challenge in science, and donor support is an incredible gift that allows students to focus on their research and learning. For students who are passionate about interdisciplinary studies, donor support also provides funding for training and outreach that is not traditionally funded. For example, during my PhD, donor support allowed me to attend the international climate negotiations and the UN Oceans Conference, where I was able to share my research with policymakers and negotiators. Witnessing knowledge gaps during these negotiations inspired an additional chapter of my PhD, in which I undertook the first ever analysis of how countries were incorporating the ocean into their climate pledges under the Paris Agreement. These experiences also taught me how scientists can effectively engage with policymakers, which is a skill set we do not learn in our classes, but is essential for my career goals. Donor support made some of the most exciting and meaningful parts of my PhD possible, including the policy outreach, but also the development of new tools to study deep sea communities, and supported my studies of how climate-driven oxygen loss may impact deep sea food webs. Much of my postdoc work is quantitative and analytical, meaning that I'm still able to continue working on it from home. However, COVID-19 has certainly had an impact on everyone in the research community. The Spring Cal Coffee Cruise has been canceled, as have many other conferences and research cruises that I was looking forward to participating in. Even this year's climate negotiations have been postponed. I'm taking this time to do what I can to focus on mentorship of other students and to work on envisioning a better future for science policy interactions. Thank you again for your support of students and your investment in the next generation. I wish you all good health.
Hi, I'm Pichia Lervilai. I'm currently working with Dr. Jules Jaffe on developing several optical instruments that help us understand the ecology of the ocean. One aspect of the ocean that I'm particularly interested in is the tiny organisms that live in the water column called zooplankton. Because of their small size, the study of zooplankton in the field is often challenging and can be very labor-intensive. As a result, I'm interested in developing a new camera system that can help facilitate the study of these small organisms in the field. I'm very fortunate to receive the support from Mia Techner Fellowship to develop this instrument. And after a lot of development, here is the plankton camera that I built. It is a small, compact system that is designed to be autonomous and can go down in the field for up to 100 meters. It can image the zooplankton in the field using this high-resolution camera with the surrounding LEDs for illumination. I got a chance to deploy it locally to study the distribution and abundance of zooplankton in the field in seagrass bed and in Mia's Reef. The instrument can capture these behaviors of zooplankton that can be very difficult to replicate in the lab. I hope that ultimately, the system will be used by other researchers to help advance our understanding of the ocean as well. Again, I would like to thank the Mia Techner Fellowship that helped make this project possible, and I would also like to thank the Jaffe Lab that helped support me throughout the project.
I would first off like to say thank you to the Chang family for their generous support. These fellowship programs are crucial to the sustainability of enterprising student research. Not only are you supporting us, the students, and our educational goals, but you're also funding the future of scientific research and the innovative discoveries that might just come along with it. I always try to incorporate some sort of public outreach into every aspect of my research, and this fellowship support has allowed me to take the extra time to expand that work and give back to our community. Now, currently, my dissertation research looks at how microbial diversity affects carbon flux from the ocean to the atmosphere in the central Arctic. Basically, I'm interested in how sea ice breathes. Not actually the ice itself, but the microscopic organisms, for example, the bacteria and phytoplankton that live inside and underneath the ice. To study these processes, I plan to use a combination of modeling approaches and field observations, including participation in the Multidisciplinary Drifting Observatory for the Study of Arctic Climate, or MOSAIC project. The field campaign for this international and interdisciplinary effort to study the Arctic ocean, ice, atmosphere system started last September and is still ongoing, creating a year-long time series of observations across the complete seasonal cycle. My research will leverage this unique time series to examine the potential drivers of microbial carbon flux across environmental and seasonal gradients in a changing Arctic. Now, if you'd like to learn more about the MOSAIC expedition, you can check out their website here or follow them on Twitter and Instagram. Or if you would like to learn more about my specific research and outreach activities, you can follow me on Twitter here or check out the Bowman Labs website here or our new Instagram as well. Now, wishing you all health and safety during these uncertain times, and thank you again for your generous support.
I would like to deeply thank the Latin American Studies Fellowship. This fellowship has allowed me to continue my research and to pursue my dream on becoming a leader on marine conservation. I'm currently working to understand how the temperature and oxygen levels in the water, in the marine water, has affected fish. And in order to do so, I'm using fish from different environments like mangrove waters and the deep sea ocean. This is very important because we know that the oceans are getting warmer and are losing oxygen at fast rates. And this, in turn, affects fish, fisheries, and the livelihoods that rely on them. In regard to the coronavirus, it is true that it has also impacted my research. I came to Brazil recently to visit my family, and I was not able to come back to San Diego since then. At the same time, this situation forced us to establish clear schedules and think a lot about how science can contribute to society in the long term. In some way, it inspires me to be part of the solution for these different environmental problems that we are facing. Fellowships like the Latin American studies are essential to make our work achievable and real.
First, I wanted to say a big thank you so much for the support. I was a recipient of the Michael Mullen Fellowship, and this fellowship allowed me to purchase equipment for a citizen science project that I run with tour ships down in Antarctica. We work with 9 different tour operators who bring travelers down to the Antarctic Peninsula each year from November through March. And I train staff on board on different ships to collect samples of phytoplankton from the water. I'm able to look at how the phytoplankton communities change during the season and then compare each year. And this is important because phytoplankton are like the grass of the field. They're the first thing that is eaten by zooplankton, or things like krill. And the krill is then eaten by the seals, the whales, and the penguins. So if we can understand how the krill's food source, or the phytoplankton, are shifting throughout the season and between each year, then maybe we can understand how that influences the entire polar food web. To me, the fellowship means that I can get more people involved in the research that I do. And by working with the tour ships, they can collect data for us every single time they go to different sites on the peninsula and get this nice time series. If you'd like to follow this project, Fjord Phyto, and see what I'm up to and what the travelers are doing every year with citizen science, you can check out the link, www.fjordphyto.org. And we also have social media accounts, Fjord Phyto, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Thank you again. I really appreciate it. It does make a difference in my life, in the work that I can do. I hope you are all well, staying healthy, and staying sane.
Well, that was wonderful. Thank you for putting that together. So I'm Peter Franks. I'm the department chair here at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography, and thank you for joining us in this really wonderful event. I'm terribly sorry that we're not meeting in person. This is my favorite event of the year. It's so nice to meet everyone. I love it when you can meet our students and see how wonderful they are. And I also really like the smoked salmon that the group gets for our breakfasts. As department chair, I oversee about 120 professors, teaching professors, lecturers, and teaching assistants. And these are the people who make our educational program the premier graduate program in the world. That means we're able to attract the top undergraduate students from around the world, and they are an essential element, as you've seen, of the research enterprise at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography. I'm also fortunate to teach courses, especially the introductory biological oceanography course. And in the course of teaching that, I've taught all the students who you'll be seeing today and all the students who are in the video. So I'm well connected to the students, and it's just such a wonderful gift that I have, that I'm able to interact with such brilliant young scientists. I'm a very, very lucky professor. Our incoming class of graduate students this year, the ones who will enter in fall of 2020, is going to be the largest in the history of Scripps. We have 73 incoming graduate students. That includes 26 master's students and 47 PhD students. And it's your generous support that helps us to recruit and train the next generation of scientific leaders. And so I want to take a moment to thank each and every one of you for your commitment. Thank you. When PhD students are admitted to our program, they're guaranteed funding for 5 years. And the average cost for students to attend Scripps is about $60,000 a year. And it's a bit more, quite a bit more actually, if they're on a grant from a federal agency. When a student's fellowship or grant runs out, the department, that's my purview, steps in to support the student through what we call bridge funding. And it's one of the great strengths of Scripps that we're able to do this. It allows students to focus on the research and not have to worry about where their funding is coming from. The shutdown of research labs during the COVID pandemic has been a significant setback to many students' research programs. And because of this, I'm expecting more than the usual number of requests for bridge support over the next few years, especially students who will have to take extra time to catch up on the research they were not able to accomplish. And your support is used for this bridge funding. It's used for tuition, research, travel, as well as attending and presenting at conferences worldwide, as you heard from the students in that video. Your support is an essential element of the continuing excellence of our graduate program. And so now we're going to hear live from 4 students who represent different areas of research at Scripps. And I would ask that if you have questions, please submit them through the Q&A icon. It's located at the bottom near the right of your screen. You can click on that and type a question in. You can type it while the students are speaking, and I will moderate that. And as long as there's a finite number of questions, I'll try and get the students to answer your questions when they finished with their presentations. And in addition, in case you can't come up with questions on the fly, we have some questions that were pre-submitted by the audience. And so our first panelist is Clint Edwards. Clint Edwards is the recipient of the Beyster Graduate Fellowship, the Stephen B. Drogin Fellowship, and the Kenneth Hill Memorial Fellowship. Clint took biological oceanography with me, and he's been here, as he says, almost as long as I have. He's had almost every position at Scripps. Once he's done with being a graduate student, we presume he'll be gunning for a professorial position. But Clint, please take it away.
Thanks, Peter, and thank you everybody for joining us today. As Peter said, my name is Clint Edwards. I am a 4th-year PhD student in the lab of Stuart Standen. My work is focusing on the hidden lives of corals, which by that what I mean is most people know about corals or think they know about corals, that they're all dying. I have the opportunity with the support of the Beyster Family Foundation Fellowship to visit a place where they're not dying and learn how they can survive and persist into the future. That said, I do a lot of work here in the lab. A lot of my work is computer-based, but I'd say more of it is spent, most of my time is spent thinking and talking with my colleagues, and that's what I'm missing the most right now. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Clint. And again, if there's any questions, please put them in the Q&A. Our next speaker will be Khen, who you saw in the video. Adi has a secret life as an artist, as you saw in the video, and I've been the lucky recipient of a number of her pieces, including algae stuck in epoxy and some really intricate and beautiful computer drawings that she's made. So get on her good side and maybe you'll get a Christmas card from her. So take it away, Adi.
Hi, thank you for being here. My name is Khen, as you heard in the video from earlier. I'm currently a 5th-year PhD student in Dr. Jennifer Smith's lab studying the long-term effects of climate change on coral reef ecology, more broadly in the marine biology department. What I miss most about SIO during this time is just interacting with the community, my lab mates and colleagues. I joke that now I interact more with animals than humans because I've still been coming in for essential animal care, cleaning tanks and feeding animals, and that leads to my fun fact, which is that I have very unique marine pets, who I love. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Adi. I should have mentioned that Adi is also the recipient of the Beyster Graduate Fellowship and the Scripps Quasi Fellowship. Congratulations to Adi. Our third panelist is Camille Pagniello. Camille is the recipient of the Fleet Admiral Chester W. Nimitz Fellowship, the Greenridge Sciences Fellowship, and the H. William Menard Memorial Fellowship. And Camille also has the distinct honor of being a Canadian, which I also am, so yay, go Canada. Camille, don't forget to unmute yourself.
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Camille Pagniello. I am a PhD candidate in applied ocean sciences in my 5th year. I study the sounds of fish in the kelp forest right off the coast of Scripps. You can take a 20-minute boat ride from the pier and you're at my study site. And I'm trying to figure out which fish makes which sound by combining passive acoustics and optical imaging. As both Clint and Addie said, I really miss interacting with my fellow classmates and just having some informal conversations about research. Sometimes you get your best ideas from a walk down the hallway. But what I really miss the most is the clear separation between work and my home life. Having to work in my bedroom has been challenging so far. The distance between my desk and my bed could be smaller. And my fun fact is you might have an extra panelist today if my cat Da Vinci decides to grace us with his presence. So thanks again for all your support, and I look forward to answering any of your questions.
Thanks, Camille. Yes, I also have a furry coworker who's snoring away beside me. Hopefully you can't hear her. And our final panelist is Natalie Posdaljian. Natalie had the distinct honor of being a counselor to my daughter at Knockaround Camp at UCSD, but she's also one of our amazing graduate students. So Natalie, if you could introduce yourself.
Thanks, Peter, and thank you all for being here. Like Peter said, my name is Natalie Posdaljian. I'm a third-year PhD student in the Biological Oceanography program. And what I'm most interested in is using acoustic tools to study marine mammal ecology, and specifically in remote locations and over really long time scales, something we can't necessarily get with visual surveys of marine mammals, but we can with acoustic tools. And what I miss most about Scripps, everyone took my answer, which is my colleagues and postdocs down the hallway and my office mates, where, like Camille said, some of your best ideas come from, and not getting stuck on one specific problem and kind of being able to talk it through. So I'm looking forward to getting back eventually. A little fun fact about myself is that I have sorry, there's an ambulance passing by, but I have a pretty big cookbook collection, including some cookbooks that are handwritten from my great-grandma that came all the way from Armenia. So I've been cooking a lot during this quarantine.
That's wonderful to hear. I think the yeast industry has done very well during this pandemic. I should have also mentioned that Natalie is the recipient of the Stout Fellowship, and the Stout family has been particularly generous, and we thank them. And thank you all. So I don't see any questions in the Q&A yet, so I'll have to grill you myself until somebody pops a question in. And so let me start with, let's start with Adi. Why did you choose Scripps?
Oh.
Yeah, you're on.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm really lucky to be at Scripps. I've actually been here for a while. I did my undergraduate degree at UC San Diego and started participating in marine biology research over at Scripps. At the time, I didn't even know that I wanted to be a marine biology major, but just being involved in research gave me a sense of purpose and motivated me to apply to graduate school. And lucky for me, I get to further my studies at Scripps with world-class researchers in a really welcoming environment, studying unique topics. So yeah, that's what set it apart for me.
That's great, Adi, thank you. Would one of the other students, Clint, Camille, and Natalie, like to field that same question, why you chose Scripps? Camille.
Sure. I told my parents at 12 years old that I was going to come to Scripps to get a PhD. I did a career cruising class, and I had already told my parents that I wanted to be a marine biologist at 7. And in the 8th grade, you do a career cruising class where you kind of plan out your career. And I planned out my undergrad, master's, and PhD. I did not do the first part of my plan, but I definitely followed through on the PhD plan. So it's kind of a dream come true for me.
And can you just tell us how far away you grew up from the ocean?
I grew up near Toronto, so
1,000 miles kind of thing.
1,000 miles plus.
Right, and you grew up fairly near to where I grew up, so, and here we both are.
Yeah, it at least takes over like 2 days to drive to the nearest ocean.
Yes, that was my my summer vacations was driving from near Toronto to Halifax. Here's a question for Clint. Are there specific reefs that you're surveying that have shown significant improvement during your time at Scripps? Improvement specifically.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question. So my lab has a project led by Stuart Sandin and our postdoc Dr. Brian Zielinski called the 100 Island Challenge, and we're going to 100 reefs around mostly the tropical Pacific, but also the Caribbean and the Indian Ocean. We visit these reefs twice after a period of 2 or 3 years, and we see how the fish and the coral communities have changed. It is quite shocking how many reefs had undergone some disturbance prior to us getting there. You could tell the first survey we got there and some of these reefs were messed up. And then by the time we returned, the reef had just bloomed. It just really looked like a field of flowers blooming or something like that. And that's up to 10-15% of the reefs we've surveyed. We've seen that generally in the Central Pacific, generally where there's less local impacts going on, but surprisingly in some places where there are people and otherwise you wouldn't have thought it would have survived.
Thank you so much, Clint. I appreciate that. There's actually another question, which is also for you from Maxine Baker. What are you referring to when you say you study the hidden lives of coral?
Yeah, so coral grow really slow, right? I mean, and that's, I'm saying that compared to other organisms, they'll grow a few centimeters a year, which is kind of a lot, but it's hard to watch that, right? So you have to watch them for a long time, and most people don't have that opportunity to watch them for a long time. And my advisor, Stuart, and my master's advisor, Dr. Jen Smith, have been working in a place called Palmyra Atoll since the early 2000s. And they've had the foresight to establish some long-term monitoring plots there. And it's really given us an unprecedented ability to watch how a handful of corals grow through time. It's not something we, surprisingly, it's not something that we get to see that often.
Thank you for that. And there's a question here for Adi. Can you tell us about some of the behavioral discoveries you've made while caring for your octopi and other sea creatures, your curious pets?
Sure. It's actually funny because caring for these creatures is not my full-time role here at Scripps. I study coral reef ecology via image analysis, but I decided to, on the side, improve my animal husbandry skills and get trained by our experimental aquarium manager, Phil Zarofsky, with our flow-through seawater system. And so I've unofficially adopted a lot of pets that I enjoy spending time with, learning from. I've written a few stories about them too and drawn them. And it's just a nice little side interest that is fulfilling and is sort of my break from my actual work. Yeah.
Are your stories available anywhere? Could you type a link in to the chat, for instance?
Yes, there's one published on Scripps News by Scripps Communications, and there's one that I recently posted on Medium, which I can share.
Well, fun. Thank you. Now, Natalie, let me pick on you for a minute. You're studying sperm whales, aren't you?
Yes.
And how did you get there?
Yeah, so before coming to Scripps, I did my undergraduate degree at UC San Diego. So Scripps was always kind of an idea that I might end up going to graduate school there and kind of a goal for myself. But when I graduated, I needed a job. So I went to Alaska and worked on commercial fishing boats as a fisheries observer. And in the summer times, I'd work on long lines. And so sperm whales love to eat off of the long line. They come and cherry pick their favorite fish right off of it. Fishermen get really upset. I'm a scientist, so I was really excited to see them. And I could only see what's happening at the surface, but I knew there was something really interesting happening at depth, which is where they spend most of their time. So I kind of thought about, well, what are some other ways I can study marine mammals, specifically sperm whales? And that kind of led me down the path of acoustics, and later down to Scripps, where we have 2 really good acoustic labs here that have tons of data, and I was able to work with that. And I'm still working with data in the Gulf of Alaska, so it's kind of come full circle for me.
Well, that's great, thank you. And there's a question here that I just love. It's from Maxine Baker, and it's probably directed more at Natalie and Camille, but how much mathematics did you study in pursuit of your research? And how many of you, so Clint, Adi, Camille, and Natalie, have studied partial differential equations, for example. Haha, you know my love of partial differential equations. Who would like to field that first? How about Natalie go first?
Yeah, so I took some math classes as an undergrad, but definitely just whatever I needed for a biology degree. And I didn't realize how important math would be later on in my graduate school career. So when I got here, my advisor made me take more calculus classes, differential equations class, linear algebra, digital signal processing, basically everything you need to become an engineer and an acoustician. So math is definitely very important in this field.
Camille, could you weigh in on that as well? And in the
Sure.
meantime, you might be able to address Tyler's question as well, which is what's been the most surprising fish sound you've heard?
Yeah, so in terms of math, I did a minor in math, and that was mostly because I did some undergraduate research fellowships that I found that my most important skills were being able to like understand the math that I was being asked to interpret and to be able to code. So those were the two skills I found were most important. So I added a math minor in my undergrad. And when I came to Scripps, the Applied Ocean Science curricular group has 2 required math classes, and partial differential equations is definitely part of that math sequence, but I don't really use it on a day-to-day. Most of my math classes essentially is when I open a book or I start reading an article, I'm not afraid by the math that's there. I can interpret it, I understand, and I move on. I'm not spending time deriving equations. That's definitely not part of my research, but I know there are definitely many at Scripps who math is a everyday part of their lives, and I would encourage anyone who wants to go into oceanography to get those data analysis skills, especially math and coding. I think we're moving into a big data era, and being able to easily manipulate data is more than Excel now. Excel is great when you have four points. When you've got millions of points, it's no longer realistic. In terms of Tyler's question about the most surprising fish sound that I've heard, the air sound that your computer makes combined with a dying frog is how I can describe one of the fish sounds. One of the professors at Scripps is excellent at recreating them, so I'm still mastering that skill, but it sounds like and you can hear it from the surface, and it's a little disturbing when you go out there and you're sitting and it's super quiet, and then right around sunset, all of a sudden you start thinking you're hallucinating because you're hearing this sound, and it's coming from the bottom and resonating through your boat. And to the point where you don't even need to have an instrument in the water to be able to hear these fish. They're really loud, and you can only hear them in the kelp forest. The moment you leave the kelp forest, it is silent again at the surface. So I would say that's definitely the most interesting sound, and the one that I've focused most of my attention on because it's quite jarring.
I would love to hear that sometime. And there's so many follow-up questions, but I want to go back to Natalie. Jim Beyster asks, what's the most puzzling sound that you've heard?
So you think, at least for sperm whales that are really well studied, that their kind of repertoire would be well documented in the literature, but luckily for me, I don't manually tease through data, but this past semester I was working with high school students that were looking really closely at the data, and they would send me little sound clips. This was in the Gulf of Alaska when they found something that they weren't sure what it was. Surrounded by sperm whale echolocation clicks, there was this kind of like groaning frog sound that the sperm whale probably made at depth because it was surrounded by echolocation clicks. I showed it to a lot of sperm whale experts. They said they've never heard anything like that. So it's still, I'm not 100% sure that it came from that animal, but there's a good chance it did.
Wow. So maybe it was just having a really bad day or something.
Yeah, or maybe we just don't know all the sounds that they make yet.
Yeah. There's a question here that I'm going to open to all the panelists, which is after attending international conferences and other sorts of experiences you have, what do you think needs to be done on an international level to deal with climate change? I realize this is a bit out of the wheelhouse for many of you, but would anybody like to try that one out? Go ahead, Clint.
I can take it. It's a scary one to answer because, as you said, it's pretty far out of our wheelhouse. I've been trained as an ecologist and a biologist most of my life, and really picking this stuff up as a interest, not as a discipline. So I'd caveat any answer that I give leading to that. But I will take the ecologist perspective, and that, you know, you need to have ecological systems do best when they're efficient. When they don't have waste, and ecological systems don't tend to have much waste. And I think internationally our means of distribution, especially with regards to shipping, incur quite a bit of waste, and we're shipping things back and forth across the Pacific for a single purchase. And that's something that I talk to with my colleagues who live in other places as well. That's about as far as I feel like I can go without feeling like I'm on rocky territory.
Fair enough, thank you.
I can say a little bit.
Yeah,
more.
Go,
I would say one of the powerful things of Scripps is that if you ask me a question like that at a larger forum, I could direct you to someone who's an expert in that, a fellow student who's actually studying climate change, who's attended those conferences, or another researcher. But in terms of what I hear when students come back from these conferences is that I think the scientists have an agreed set of values, but the values don't transcend beyond science sometimes. So having everyone agree about this, that we value the same things, is I think the first step towards actually getting cooperation to solving a problem. And I don't think we're there yet, unfortunately. But we're doing the right steps, and I think a lot of students have taken on this challenge head on and are doing some incredible work in this field.
Thank you. Natalie, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to say in terms of marine mammals that migrate across international borders and don't really understand, you know, that they're in US waters or in Japanese waters. It's international agreements and relationships are extremely important. And I know personally our lab tries to collaborate as much as possible when it's in the best interests of the organism or in the region that we're studying. And I think it's really important and we need to get better at it and yeah, continue doing that.
Thank you for that. Adi, did you want to add anything?
Not much beyond what the other student panelists said. Just in general, we need to keep raising awareness about climate change and reaching out to the younger generations who can take action and being involved in any way we can. So that's my stance. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, we're just about out of time. And so I'd like to thank all the panelists for their wonderful stories, their amazing research. And as I said, one of the great joys of my life is interacting with students like you see here, and then watching them become scientists and replacing me, which is the goal of all of this after all. Margaret, were you going to give any closing words here, or is it me to close the fellowship branch? There she is. You're still muted, Margaret.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you so much. And thanks to all of the students who participated, either by their recorded videos or all of you who were on the panel. That was terrific. And it was great to hear your stories. And thank all of you who joined us today to learn about these really talented and passionate students at Scripps. Your support, as you heard, makes a tremendous difference in their lives and their careers. And Scripps just wouldn't be the same without your continued partnership in our training of the next generation of ocean and earth scientists. If you would like to look into further support for Scripps Oceanography Fellowships, please reach out to the development team. You can reach them just by emailing supportscripps@ucsd.edu. And you can also make a gift online through the Scripps website. So I'd like to thank you, Peter, you're our moderator for today, and Adi, Clint, Camille, Natalie, for participating and for telling us all what you're doing and what some of the fun facts are about you. For all of you in the audience, we really hope to see you back at Scripps very soon. And in the meantime, stay healthy, stay well. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.